absolutely 10 times more challenging than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I honestly visioned myself being pregnant, working to the day I gave birth, like all of that. Because I'm only little, I'm only 5'2", and I'm always quite petite. So I already thought, oh, pregnancy is going to be big on me. And then when I found out it was twins, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be massive. And I was. I used to have comments from people I didn't know, like walking down the street. How many of you got in there? I'm like, twins, all right. Floor are the muscles that support you in your pelvis. So they support all of your pelvic organs, and it works as well with your respiratory system as well. So that like relaxes down as you breathe in and tightens up. So it helps support you. If they weren't there, you'd probably just all fall out in between your legs. So they're pretty important, and we need them. I mean, if you lose a bicep, you could probably live, but if you don't have your pelvic floor...
Speak for yourself. Can pregnant people still do ab exercises? And if so, what can they do?
Yeah, I think when people talk about ab exercises, they're generally talking about like that flexion, you know, like a crunch, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're
you
thinking of that foot. Yeah, that's what a lot of people tend to think about when they're talking about ab exercises. But if I can just then teach people to talk about their abs, thinking of it as their core, so thinking of their core system, absolutely yes, you can and should be working that through pregnancy.
Hi guys, and welcome to the podcast. Today I'm here with Sophia Williams. She is a pre and post natal specialist, also known as the Mum Bod PT on YouTube. Today I'm going to be asking her some of the internet's most asked questions pre and post natally. So let's kick it off with, what exactly is a mum bod?
Okay, so when I was pregnant, I had a bit of a concern about having a mum bod after I'd given birth. And that, to me, is, you know, being a bit overweight, unfit, I guess, in terms of letting myself go. And I didn't have the easiest return to exercise after pregnancy. So this sort of feeling of being like, I've got a mum bod, and if you Google it, it tends to be a term, it's not a compliment basically to say someone's got a mum bod. It's kind of like that term of like letting yourself go. And I was like, but I'm working so hard here, and I've got a mum bod because I'm a mother and I have a body. And then as my body improved just through exercise, I still realised I've got a mum bod because I'm a mother, and it doesn't mean that I'm ugly, and it doesn't mean I've let myself go. It's just, I am a mother, I've got a body, this is my mum bod, and I can still do all these amazing things with it, and that's cool. So I wanted to kind of twist that term around and turn it into more of a positive thing, instead of thinking of it being that term where people just think women have let themselves go after having children.
So you're wearing it proudly.
Absolutely, yeah.
A mum's body. Yeah, I like that. That's really good. I think people have turned the dad bod to some extent into like a positive. And I'm a dad, and definitely you can only focus on so many things in your life. Yeah. So health is a priority, but my kids are equal priority. So some of my like gym work did take a step back. I don't say I've got a dad bod as such, but definitely like.
But if you say you're a dad with a body, that is.
I'm a dad, and this is the body that I can sustain.
Yes.
If that's a dad bod, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some of the questions. So I think we'll start off with some prenatal ones and move on to the postnatal questions. I think most people just want to know, can I still exercise, as in not me, but can people still exercise whilst they're pregnant? And if they can, at what point should they or could they start exercising? So is it okay?
Well, I think the majority of the time you would become pregnant and not realise you're pregnant straight away. So if you're already training and already exercising, you're already continuing until you're probably like 6 or 7 weeks pregnant, and then you might find out you're pregnant, and then the panic might set in. So generally, you can do pretty much everything you want to do. Any sort of like contact sports, anything with a risk of a fall, or any extreme temperatures, so something in high temperatures, like you can't go in the sauna and everything. We'd say don't do anything at risk of falling. I would say horse riding probably is a bit of a dangerous one, but then there's people that like to horse ride, so I don't know.
Try and take the horses off someone that's in that world. That's
it's a difficult one. Yeah. Everyone's still got their passions, and everyone still wants to continue doing what they're doing. So yes, continue exercising. Obviously, if you've got any like medical complications, obviously you'll go for your screening when you find out you're pregnant. So if there are any contraindications, then you may be put on bed rest. In that case, you've got to listen to your doctor. But I'm talking about people who've got no complications. training when pregnant is going to be good for you and good for your baby, and you can modify as you go along.
And you can start right away.
And you can start right away.
Yeah.
The intensity may change. So if you're someone who's never exercised before, just start at a lower intensity till you're up to a certain level, and then you'll be adapting it as you go through your pregnancy.
Just as a little caveat, anyone listening, most of what we talk about today is going to be for people with no complications for their pregnancy. So we'll just say that obviously people are going to go to their doctor when they get pregnant to discuss it. So most of what we talk about, I think we're just safe to assume, unless we specify otherwise, that this is just for a pregnancy.
Yeah, otherwise
no complications.
there are so many different...
Yeah, we can't go through all the variables. A lot of what people ask is, can I still do ab exercises? They often have a desire to still do it. So can pregnant people still do ab exercises? And if so, what can they do?
Yeah, I think when people talk about ab exercises, they're generally talking about like that flexion, like a crunch, aren't they?
Yeah,
so
your
thinking of that
rectus abdominis.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people tend to think about when they're talking about ab exercises. But if I can just then teach people to talk about their abs, thinking of it as their core, so thinking of their core system, absolutely yes, you can and should be working that through pregnancy. Yeah. There'll be different exercises you'll want to do, because we think, instead of thinking that rectus, that six-pack muscle, if you think of your core system and how important it is, that includes that layer of the deepest muscles, the transverse abdominals, the pelvic floor, your diaphragm, and the little muscles along the back that just help support you, the multifidus as well. If you think about working those, then yes, absolutely, you can and should continue doing ab core exercises throughout pregnancy.
So basically, not so much rectus abdominis flexion exercises, but yes, we want to strengthen the core,
and we want to
specifically the transverse
abdominals in different planes. So you could, probably the best, if you're going to do one exercise, the best one is called Hug the Baby, and you could do this on all fours, or you can do it standing or kneeling. And if you imagine I've got my bump, basically you're going to do a nice inhale, let everything expand, and as you exhale, gently lift your pelvic floor, so a little Kegel there, and then draw that baby, so using your muscles to draw your baby towards your spine.
On all fours.
So on all fours, that's kind of nice because you can really feel the gravity, and you'll see like baby, your bump like just drawing up and disappearing there, and coming back down, so you're really working those transverse abdominals. So if there's one ab exercise to do, I'd say that would be the best one.
Great, so it's almost like a kneeling dead bug.
Yeah, so just engage the core, working all those muscles.
Great, so kneel, what's it called again? Hug the Baby.
Hug the Baby. If you Google Hug the Baby, that will...
I'll put it up on the screen.
I'm pretty sure
I'll put a demo up for any of the people watching online. What exercises should people avoid whilst they're pregnant?
So manic crunches.
Crunches,
doing that.
Sit-ups, I guess, as well.
Yeah, so we talk about high impact exercises, because what we want to be cautious of is the pelvic floor, that's going to be vulnerable, and the front of your abdominals, that's going to be more vulnerable, because obviously
and what
that's
is your
all
pelvic
stretched.
floor?
Pelvic floor are the muscles that support you in your pelvis, so they support all of your pelvic organs, and it works as well with your respiratory system as well, so that like relaxes down as you breathe in and tightens up, so it helps support you. If they weren't there, you'd probably just all fall out in between your legs, so they're pretty important and we need them. I mean, if you lose a bicep, you could probably live, but if you don't have your pelvic floor...
Speak for yourself. Maybe you. Exercises to avoid, high impact.
To avoid.
So box jumps. Risk of falling, I guess.
Anything risk of falling. I would say you can pretty much make anything into an unsafe exercise, depending on how you're doing it. If I'm talking about pelvic floor and your core, because if you're doing things wrong and people think of exercise and they do it for 1 hour of the day, but everything you do throughout the day is important as well, because that is impact on your pelvic floor. Your core is working. So if you've got a job where you're always lifting, if you're not supporting your pelvic floor properly, then you could be putting added pressure on there as well, which then can lead to your pelvic organ problems like prolapse, leaking as well when you're
So now, apart from the obvious things where you might fall and crunches and sit-ups, it really depends on your experience level. If it's comfortable for you, it's okay to carry on doing. Can you tell us a little bit about, if you're comfortable, about your pregnancy experience? I know you've had twins, so what was it like for you? Was it more challenging or easier than you initially thought it was going to be?
Absolutely 10 times more challenging than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I honestly visioned myself being pregnant, working to the day I gave birth, like all of that. And it's just, because I'm only little, I'm only 5'2", and I'm always quite petite, so I already thought, oh, pregnancy is going to be big on me. And then when I found out it was twins, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be massive. And I was. I used to have comments from people I didn't know, like walking down the street. How many of you got in there? I'm like, twins, all right. So I used to
Did you find that difficult? Did you cope with it? Were you conscious of it?
I did just get so many looks. Like if I walked into a restaurant, people would like lean back when I came in because I was just like this massive orb full of baby walking through. But I was like self-conscious. Yeah, I was self-conscious, but I just had to kind of mentally separate myself from what my body was going through and what it looked like, and just be like, it's just important that I just carry these babies, get through that, and then we'll deal with anything else, any other issues like later on.
My clients I've had, some of them have been like really against people coming up, and they said that people touch their stomach a lot, which is unusual. Yeah. Like how often in everyday life will a stranger physically touch you, especially on your
one of my weirder ones, it wasn't when I was pregnant, it was when I'd given birth and I was walking with my double pushchair, looking all tiny, and these two women were like cooing over Lily and Eloise, and then proceeded to lift up my top to check what my belly looked like after, and I was like,
I think that's everyone's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and I was like, they were like older ladies, like, oh, and they cute, oh, look at you, how's that going? And I was like, I was just stood outside a shop because I couldn't get my pushchair into the shop while my friend was in there, and I was like, okay. I'm that sort of person that I don't automatically say what I want to say at that moment in time. It's only after I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. I just let them have a look at my body.
Little peek. What about postnatally?
What about postnatally?
How did you find? How was your recovery? Was it quicker than you thought?
Do you know what? Everything I think I went through was textbook fine. I had no issues. Scar healed nicely. No particular problems that I was aware of.
So you had a C-section?
I had a C-section, yeah. I planned a C-section. And I had my 6-week check, probably about 6 weeks, at the doctor's. And I remember that just being like a tick-the-box routine. She didn't really look at me properly. She kind of went to the screen, asked me a ton of questions, ticked off the boxes as she went on, and I was like, okay, we're fine. I was like, am I okay to exercise now? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, bye. And like just proceeded out of the room. It just felt like that conveyor belt of, you've gone to the doctor's and now it's time for you to get out.
I always find that really strange. So it's like, there's such a black and white, even with the pre and postnatal training course and the doctor's advice, it's so black and white. It's like, okay, after 4 to 6 weeks, let's say with a conventional birth, you can exercise as if like you can just switch it on and you're back.
What does that mean?
I think postnatally it always needs to be like a gradual process, doesn't it? We've got some postnatal questions here. We've got, when can I start exercising post-pregnancy? So 4 to 6 weeks, is that about right for a 6
months? You need to, if you want to start training, you do need to have your doctor's note. But I always, after learning what I've learned, I actually think women should be given a really good rehab program from the second that they give birth.
So really they can start somewhat training.
Yeah, you can start reconnecting.
Or rehabilitating straight away.
Your deep core muscles and your pelvic floor.
What's the first action they could take after having a bit of rest to start bringing things back together?
I'd say start off with some good breathing exercises, because generally your rib cage gets pushed out, obviously to make room for your baby.
Yeah.
And you just want to reconnect that nice stacked position within your core, so the connection between your pelvic floor and diaphragm would be the best place to start.
So when you talk about breathing exercises, those breathing exercises are actually strengthening your pelvic floor because the two things are linked.
Yes.
I think it's going to be quite hard in a podcast to explain those. So I'll link in the description of the video. You've got a postnatal course, is that right?
Yeah, I've got like a core foundations course.
Which takes you through the breathing. So I think that's going to be better than us trying to like talk through how to do that. But basically there are breathing exercises you can do straight away in the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, reconnecting with your pelvic floor and working on your posture. So these are things that I would say are important exercises to do, but when people say don't exercise, they think, oh, I should do absolutely nothing. And then we're starting again, 6, 7, 8 weeks later, just learning those basics, when you could already start healing faster and better if you just start those real simple exercises.
One of the most common questions asked is, when can I start running postnatally? I always think running is like almost right at the end of your like rehab process. But what are your opinions on that?
So when you said rehab, that's really important. So if you are a keen runner, you want to start rehabbing in those 0 to 6 weeks, so practicing those breathing exercises, Kegels, etc. And then again, working on a progressive program. So working on your pelvic floor strength and tone, you want to make sure that's good. You want to be working on simple exercises, so like your squats and everything like that, get those looking good. And then probably about 12 weeks, start a running program. So not going straight into your first 5K run, but building that up slowly as well.
So sorry for any runners out there, basically. You got to put the work in.
Well, is it worth the risk, basically?
Yeah.
You're still going to have that ligament laxity after giving birth. Your pelvic floor is still going to be vulnerable. And is it worth putting a bit of time into rehabbing and progressing? Yeah.
I agree with you. It might not be the answer people want to hear, but
for the longevity of it,
the amount of women that we see in the gym that come in 2-3 years postnatally and they're still having pelvic floor issues because I think they didn't spend that first 6 weeks doing your Kegel exercises, pelvic floor breathing, and then I think the next probably 6 weeks after that is your sort of gym work, isn't it? Higher pressure exercises.
And pelvic organ prolapse doesn't necessarily happen straight away after you've given birth. You could feel absolutely fine, and it could be 6 months, 12 months down the line that you suddenly start having symptoms of it. So
I've got a question from my wife actually, and she said, this is a tough one to answer, but where can you start? I think there'll be a lot of people who relate to this, but where can you start if you've got a baby and you just feel too tired and the thought of adding more physical exertion in is just too much? How can you get motivated? And how can these people build up the enthusiasm, or where should they start?
I think that is the biggest challenge, isn't it? Is, you're sleep deprived, so you don't have enough energy to start exercising. So yes, all of that. But what's the solution to that? I think the solution to it is having help from people. So if you want to make some time, ask for, if it's half an hour for someone to look after your baby so you can focus on yourself. Starting off slow, bite-sized chunks. Start off with 10 minutes, build it up to 20 minutes. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. So I have a real problem with these bounce back programs. Like, congratulations to this woman who looks like she's never had a child and she's just had a baby like 10 weeks ago. Like, that's not going to make you feel good.
I think they can be quite harmful, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's inspiring if you're struggling.
I don't think it's inspiring. It made me feel down. It made me feel sad when I didn't look like other people who just had a baby. So I do think just bite-sized chunks, doing it when you can. You don't need to be dressed up in your, Lululemon and any other sports clothes. If you've got 10 or 15 minutes, I've got some postnatal exercise videos. So following along those, you could just do that in whatever you're wearing, get it done, and start building it into your routine. So then you're starting to build those positive habits, those good habits that just layer and stack on each other, as opposed to making it a big all or nothing, like I've got to go work out. Another good thing you could do is join one of those classes where you can bring your baby. So then make that part of your schedule. So if the baby has a nap, maybe you can have a little rest, then you get up and go to this class, or try and slot it in with what suits your routine.
So start small.
Start small,
regular, but no pressure to do too much.
Eventually, things calm down. You're not going to feel this exhausted. I always say that.
you might feel this exhausted for a long time.
Yeah. We were just talking about how tired we were. I was before. No, but you're not going to feel like that forever, and your baby will grow, and you'll find your rhythm, and it's not a race to get there.
Yeah, but you do have to be working on it. It won't happen by accident either, will it?
No.
I think a lot of people hope time heals to some extent, but I do think there has to be some positive action mixed in.
That's so good personal trainer talk there, Tom, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, final question. Lots of people are wondering about, not everyone calls it diastasis recti. Some people just say ab separation. I'm not sure to what extent ab separation becomes diastasis recti, but how long does it take for that to come together, and what can people do to speed up or encourage that process?
Okay, so diastasis recti is considered if you have more of a 2.5 finger width gap in between your rectus muscles. So you can actually measure it. If it's under 2.5 finger width gap, I think some women still feel like they can't quite engage their abs. But there's nothing like, no one would really do surgery on that if you've only got a 2.5 finger width gap. But
so let's say they have, it's like...
So say they have, what we want to look for is not just the gap, but also the depth that your fingers could sink in if you're, testing on yourself or you've got someone testing. So we just check to see how much is sinking, if there's much. If it's quite spongy and bouncy, then it's fine. You're generating enough tension across that linea alba. But if it sinks right in, then you probably need to do a little bit of work. Now, generally, most will heal by themselves over time. Some people need a little bit of help with exercise. And then there's some people that actually have done all the work, they've done everything they possibly could, and they're just still not getting anywhere, then surgery could be an option. So I'm not saying that surgery is the worst thing in the world. In some cases, it could be good. But if you do go for surgery, still do the rehab exercises.
And what are the rehab exercises?
Rehab exercises. Well, they'll be different depending on what the issue is with the diastasis, with the separation. Some people might find it's just at the top. Some people find it's more at the belly button. Sometimes people find it's a little lower down. Some have it all the way along. Some people need to work on like the tension that you generate there.
I'm going to keep pushing you until you give me an exercise.
Okay.
Give me your
number one. Okay.
2 favourite.
No, okay, 2 of the easiest things you could do is work on those breathing exercises. So really getting the diaphragm to work.
On the all fours.
You could just be lying down on your back or onto the side, getting the rib cage to move, so it's not getting left in that stuck out postpartum position. So getting that rib cage to move, getting the pelvic floor to work with it as well. So that will cause natural healing. It's a natural sort of exercise.
Breathing. I will put those in your... They're in your course, so I'll link
And another one is working on your posture as well, because if you are moving throughout the day in a poor posture, you're forcing the internal pressure to go against that gap a lot of the time, so it's not giving it a chance to heal. So if you can put your body in a nice position, better posture, you're utilising your whole system to breathe instead of putting a lot of pressure on that front midline.
So when you say posture, do you mean the tendency to have an overarched lower back and be overstretching?
Yeah, which is quite a common
So you're basically going to
posture.
tilt the pelvis under ever so slightly.
And bringing the rib cage down instead of leaving it all out
bring the
flared.
rib cage down and in and avoid, And that's quite a common posture even when you're holding the baby, isn't it? To almost like
oh gosh, do you know what? I had 2 ladies in the other day training with the babies, and I held babies for both of them. Oh, and you just forget how much like your upper back hurts from like leaning back and holding the baby. And I was like, I've got to correct my posture here so I don't end up with a sore back. So anyway, breathing exercises, getting that rib cage to move, so improving your posture will be a really, really good place to start. And then adding a little bit of load. As with anything, if you want to improve a muscle, you want to generate a little bit of force to help it.
By progressing the exercises just onto more challenging ones. Great. Thanks so much. Where can people find you if they want more advice and tips pre and postnatally?
You can find my YouTube channel. That's just the Mum Bod PT on
Is
YouTube.
If you go at the Mum Bod PT, we'll link it in the description.
And I've got my website, which is themumbodpt.com.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for giving us some tips. Hopefully you found it useful. Good luck if you're on your pregnancy journey. Congratulations, and see you again soon for another episode.